Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Not thank God it's Monday because Mondays you never thank God for, but it's not a bad Monday here in Buffalo. Not a bad Monday in New Jersey where Russ's Jets are now 4-2 and the Bills. And we'll let Russ start with the pre-show, but I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about the football this weekend.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
we will. It's an interesting thing. Look, I know that I'm in the media, and so I'm always very aware of, and especially when I do shows and when we do this show, hey, we want to try and mention as many teams as possible, give credit where credit is due. Uh, the Jets have a history of the media treating them like they're a joke, or well, if they're good, this is temporary. They're going to just be bad again until they're not. Like during the Rex Ryan era, they were mostly good. Right now, they're on the road to being good. Like they have the fourth or fifth best defense. Brees Hall, who is a rookie, who's probably the running right now in the lead for the rookie of the year for offense, is ninth in the league in combined yardage, rushing and passing. All those things. There's so many things to talk about, and instead, like ESPN, with the exception of like Michael Irvin for a minute and Rex Ryan for a minute, yeah, they just want to talk about like the failures of Aaron Rodgers instead of like, hey, Aaron Rodgers got beaten up in that game.
mhm.
He had plenty of chances to complete passes. It wasn't all on his receiver. So, the basic talking points, even on the Fox broadcast, it was like Quinnen Williams, who's already been an all pro. They were acting like, hey, this is like Quinnen Williams is really good. Like this is his coming out party. And it's like, he's been really good for a few years now.
Yeah,
This
well,
isn't
that might be because Fox broadcasts mostly NFC games, and
But you had time to do work.
I know,
You
I
had
know.
time to watch the games. There was only 3 games you'd have to watch before you had to do it, right? So those kinds of things will always irk me. But yeah, Mike, even I had to root against your team, as you know, because this would have been an oddity where, hey, had the Bills lost, the Jets would have been in first place. I don't think it would have lasted,
They'd have been
but
tied. They'd have been tied.
they'd have been tied. But they'd have been in first, yeah. But again, it was just one of those things where even having a moment like that is a big deal for Jets fans and
Yeah.
fans of teams that, have been bad for a long time.
Well, I know that Salah at the beginning of the year when they after a loss had told people that they would choke on their criticism,
Yeah.
and I think that was a little bit of a rallying cry. And if from an objective third party looking at the Jets, I don't know what Wilson is yet. I think
No, I think that's fair.
yeah. But Hall so far has played really well as a rookie. Williams, as you said, has been rewarded in the past. They have a great corner in Gardner. One of the play-by-play team. One of the things that they said I thought was accurate is the fact that all their quality young players are in the key positions. They're at
Right.
Cover corner, pass rusher, running back, wide receiver. With Wilson. So they're addressing their now. I'm still skeptical of their offensive line, and when they face a withering pass rush, then we'll see how Wilson is tested. But there's no denying that right now in New York City, the Jets are 4-2. The Giants are 5. The Giants are doing it with smoke and mirrors. I don't know how they're 5-1, but
Well,
they are.
I can explain it.
You give them
It's
a lot of
not.
credit for doing it, but
I do give him credit. It looks like Williams didn't win All Pro, but I think he was close a year ago. But anyhow, either way, he's been a known guy. Here's the thing about the Giants. Growing up a Jets fan, I've always been keenly aware of the Giants because they've been the more winning franchise. It's hard not to be. And there have been years where just the Giants defy logic. You start the year and they say they're not any good. And you know what? All of a sudden they're good. All of a sudden they're in the playoffs. All of a sudden they're going way further than you would expect in the playoffs. And that's happened at least 3 or 4 times in my lifetime. I said a week ago, it looks like that's what's happening now with the new coach. And I'll tell you what it is with the Giants. Like they were inept for a few years, no question about it. And maybe Daniel Jones, they finally have figured out how to work with him instead of, trying to change him. But in the end of the day, the Giants have a lot of help. They have a lot of great alumni. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that could really help that football team on any given day's notice with just a phone call and everything else. So they have a lot of resources, and they weren't going to stay bad for long. And I think even locally here in Philly, I was having a conversation and I tried to explain this to like a Philly radio guy, and he's like, I don't buy it with the Giants. And I'm like, telling you, they're going to be fighting with the Eagles now for the division because it just seems like it's one of those years.
Yeah.
And you can't explain it.
And Dallas, I mean, even without a quarterback, they're 4-2, so they're still in the race, even though they lost to Philadelphia yesterday. I have to say, though, I mean, obviously, I was focused on the Buffalo Kansas City game, and that was just a knockdown, drag out, one of these games that I just hate because there's it was too much tension, too much everything going into the fourth quarter, and
it was right there. It was a close game, man.
Yeah, and of course, I thought, as usual, the Bills would get screwed because a defensive lineman tripped Josh Allen on a play, and they didn't call the penalty.
Yeah, that was bad.
It was completely blatant. But in the end, they came through, and the patron saint Patrick Mahomes actually made a mistake. So now the Bills, they're on the driver's seat because it's 6 games into the season, but they needed the tiebreaker in Kansas City.
Yeah.
They got to keep winning. The funny thing is their schedule gets a lot easier after they play Green Bay after the break. But they have most of their division games, and those aren't going to be easy because New England's not a pushover. The Jets are not a pushover. But
any given year, those games are at least competitive, at least for a little while.
But I can't wait till Miami comes here so the Bills can absolutely poleaxe them. And getting to one other thing, because somebody in the chat was saying, well, the Yankees choked again. Game 5 is tonight, idiot. So they haven't choked yet. Now, if they lose tonight, that's an official choke, sure. But never have I wanted to see a player get beamed more in my life than Josh Naylor of the Guardians after he hits a home run yesterday off of Garrett Cole. And as he's walking around the bases, he's doing this thing like daddy. And Garrett Cole pitched 7 innings and won the second game of the series. So who's your daddy now, Josh? Really, if it wasn't a Game 5 elimination game, and maybe he can do that with some impunity, but I have a feeling that if the Guardians play the Yankees next year, somebody with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball is going to hit him right in the back or hit him right on the tuchus, because
that's possible.
That kind of stuff, honestly, it's like, okay, flip the bat. I hate Jose Bautista for doing that stuff because Jose Bautista started this down the road. Everybody's styling and profiling. Everybody, Josh Donaldson thinks he's hit a home run. He's running back. He gets picked off at first base. I don't understand what is wrong with baseball today that players can't just hustle. I didn't see a lot of the game last night. I saw the latter part of it, but apparently Gleyber Torres on base didn't run out that ended up being a double play, which is something that he's done all year. Okay, flip the bat if you want to, if the ball's out of the park, but none of this rocking the cradle crap. Really, I'd love to see him get beamed tonight, but it's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. The game's too important. You know that.
Right. So, okay, let's get the party started here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, October 17th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, we'll start, obviously, taking a look at the respective teams that Russ and I covered, and then we'll broaden out to the rest of the league. First weekend of the league, we've had some surprises, and I think none bigger than the Philadelphia Flyers being 2-0. They beat New Jersey the first game, then they beat Vancouver. We'll talk about Jersey in a while, but 8 goals for, 4 goals against, 2-0 at home, and it helps sometimes to start at home. It is the John Tortorella era now in Philadelphia, and Torts made some comments, Russ, that you wanted to sort of reflect on.
Yeah, first I'll give credit where credit's due. I mean, first, Carter Hart really has been a big deal in both games. I think the Flyers have gotten some good offense. They've had great work ethic. Like, they've outworked these other teams. And again, the Devils still have trouble in net. Like, at this point in time, Mackenzie Black Blackwood is not the number one goalie. They should abandon that immediately. I've spoken to people about him besides what I see. His time is gone. And if they're going to stick with him, they're in trouble.
And if that's, I was going to say, if that's the case and they have to rely on Vitek Vanacek as their number one goaltender, that, then that they're in big trouble. But continue.
Big trouble. I mean, this is just where it's at. I think they should, start experimenting with Vanacek more. As far as the Vancouver Canucks, they are a disaster in their own end. My God, they're so bad. They were 0 for 5 on the power play, which apparently was good the game before. But they even took Quinn Hughes off the top power play for a moment just because they were so desperate to kind of get anything going. They were just leaving pucks behind. They were clearly the faster team, and at times were getting the better chances, especially early in the game. But they got outworked, and I give the Flyers credit for that. Okay, so now let's talk about John Tortorella's comment here. So Bill Meltzer put this up. This is a young, dumb league. You can attention that for a little while. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't a perfect translation. It's hard to teach thinking. When you have a player who has smarts and goes to the right places, that guy is well on his way to becoming a good pro. Okay, so here's the things that I take out of this. The first one that I take out of this is I want to say 4 or 5 days ago, John had said that he is training the guys. He has no choice. He has to play young talent. And I had said if John had taken over a team like the Devils, he wouldn't let any young talent in. He would basically go in with every veteran he could. Here in Philly, he can't. But this is his way of telling you guys are going to be rotating up all year long because he's not going to have the time to work with them in season. This is what he's telling you. And I don't agree with it because, again, there's a member of his own team, I'm not going to say the name of the player, who used to have horrible hockey sense and now doesn't. And he's a good player. And this is, so I've seen it happen. And I can't tell you that first statement about what John said, how wrong he is. Because if that were the case, if all these players, young players, were dumb, how did the Colorado Avalanche win? Like, it's just, come on, John. I mean, sometimes he really thinks he invented the game, and he is a great coach. There's no question about it. But again, sometimes these methods are, make you shake your head.
Yeah, I mean, I get with Torts, almost get the feeling that he has to say something shocking just to sort of get attention, and not for himself, but attention to his.
I guess.
No, attention to his method.
Yes.
So, okay, I'm calling you dumb. So that means what you have to do is pay more attention to what I say so we can get to our end goal. Okay, fine. But, I don't particularly think this is a dumb league because honestly, some of the systems that they teach and that they play now, you can't be dumb.
I mean, is Moritz Seider dumb?
No,
as a rookie, no.
I think the one thing he's saying is there are exceptions to the rule, and that those are the players that end up being stars and being whatever. And Seider's well on his way to being a star.
Yeah, but I disagree even with that, Mike. I think if that were the case, that means every team would have 1 or 2 young players, and everybody else would be a veteran. But again, if you look at the age of the league, it is getting younger. And I disagree with this statement because we've seen teams have 2 or 3 really good young players playing like the Red Wings did last year and scoring a lot of points in this league. So, what does that say?
I think I would equate what Torts is talking about to youthful mistakes. I don't think it's stupidity.
Right, well, that's what he should say then, because the broad brush is bad.
Right. But I it's like, okay, you've got to, like today, Cam York was not called up and Zach McEwen was.
Right.
Why? Well, because hey, Cap, we're live.
Hey.
Just want to finish my point here, and then I want to ask you something. So, I think the reason that they did that is because they weren't exactly happy with the way Cam York played in training camp. They want him to sort of maybe pay his dues a little bit and learn his way in the American Hockey League, and what they didn't feel that they could call him up and accomplish that that goal at the same time. So that's why they probably did that. But
it is.
Yeah. Kev, I just wanted to, say welcome back. And how was the European tour?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, no, it was. My wife and I had a great time. I'd been to Italy before, but it never gets old. And I enjoyed chatting with a lot of Italians, and I finally learned how to cross the street in Rome. It's all about eye contact. That's what a woman taught me. You got to make eye contact with the drivers as they're bearing down on you. You got to let them know who's boss and that you're going to cross regardless of what the signal says. And that's the key. It seems to me it's no different than Manhattan.
Manhattan's the same way.
Yeah. Other than the Italian motorcycle riders and scooter drivers and automobile and buses, they do tend to stop, where I'm less sure of that in New York.
No, that's true.
So anyway, but it was a good time. A lot of wine, too much wine. And I learned about wine, though. Anything that's aged under a year, according to a winery owner that I met, said that's a breakfast wine, he said. So I guess that's what you have with your oatmeal. But
it's red water.
And anything aged over 3 years is for meditation, she said.
I will say the one thing, I'm not a wine expert. I did take a wine class once, and I've tried Italian wines. They're okay. Sometimes they're a little too sweet for me, though.
Yeah. Well, none of the ones that I had were all that sweet. They were
okay, so I guess they've changed.
Well, I mean, I think they make both kinds, to be honest.
Yeah.
As opposed to myself, who I'm a wine expert, not a wine expert.
You're an Italian winer.
You are. You might be the number one wine expert that I know. So.
Okay, I saw you just posted something. You're back. You're covering the Red Wings, and Tyler Bertuzzi, who has had injury problems in the past, now is out 4 to 6 weeks. How serious of an injury is it?
Well, I mean, I think he's going to miss 20 games. This is a 4 to 6 week injury. They're just saying it's upper body, but he clearly took a shot to the hand while trying to block a shot. We're guessing it's broken. To what extent, we don't know, obviously. But if you look at the way the Red Wings schedule plays out, it could be a 20-game loss. That's a quarter of the season. And as you mentioned, I'm not one who believes in, you're injury prone, but guys are unlucky, and he really has been unlucky. He played only 9 games 2 years ago. And if you look at all of his seasons, he's missed games. And this is, this shot could have hit him anywhere, but it hit him in the hand. Right. Because of that, and he's obviously plays on the top line. He gives the team he fuels their energy because of the way he plays. He's first in line whenever there's trouble, and he's a 30-goal scorer. So, and this couldn't be. It's an inopportune time, because if the Red Wings can't get him signed, they have to at least consider trading him. This is kind of a construct situation. So, it's not the ideal for the Red Wings, but the fact that it happened early is better than it happened in late.
Is he fully vaccinated, Kev? Because I never heard the updates on
that. Don't know, but it's not a factor anymore, because
you can cross the bridge.
Yeah, I guess it's not, unless something were to slip back during the winter. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. No, I don't know what his vaccine status. He called it a private matter when we've asked him in the past about it. So
which you can assume something by him saying that, but you can't. Now, as for injury prone, and as Russ gleefully pointed out when we did Off the Post yesterday, Matt Murray has found himself on the IR with an adductor injury, and Kev, I was there at practice. It was so innocuous. He was doing a drill. All of a sudden, he skated off the ice. And then we found out when Sheldon Keefe held his comments after the morning skate that they were looking into it. And the Leafs, for about 4 or 5 hours, could have had a roster crisis had he not been placed on LTIR, because they have 3 goaltenders other than Murray and Samsonov signed to NHL contracts, and 2 of the 3 are hurt. or at least at that point were hurt, and the other one was in Sweden. So they really wouldn't have had a backup goaltender, and they're already at 50 contracts. It ended up working out. Shalgren, their third goalie, was injured on Friday night in Rochester. He was given the medical clearance. He backed up Samsonov against Ottawa on Saturday, and now Shalgren is getting the start tonight for Toronto against the Arizona Coyotes. But the Murray thing, he's going to be out a month. And, when they signed Samsonov, they said, okay, then that's the backup. That's the disaster backup, because this is a guy who has played 40 plus games, and they're probably going to need him to play that amount of games with Murray's questionable medical situation.
Yeah, neither one of them is coming off an exceptional year, as we all know. I mean, Washington was very disappointed in their goaltending, including Samsonov last season, and they elected to really change up their entire goaltending, essentially, last season. So, I mean, he obviously, Samsonov has a lot of potential. I mean, he was drafted high in the draft. People thought he had potential. He has shown it in glimpses at the NHL level. And I think there are people that I've talked to that thought that he had a better chance to end up being the goalie than Murray, for the reasons that you just mentioned, that he seems to be unlucky when it comes to injuries. And he really hasn't played well when he's been healthy, since that he had his glory time with the Penguins. So, I guess this isn't shocking, but it's good that it happened early. Now they get a chance to see Samsonov, and they got to hope for the best. I guess the question is, and we've kind of circled around this multiple times, does the Maple Leafs goaltending has to be special, or does it just need to be steady? Okay, reasonable.
I think it needs to be competent, and they need a big save every once in a while. They got that against Washington on Thursday in the opener. Samsonov let in a couple soft goals, but then made a couple big saves later on. He was steady against Ottawa. They're playing Shalgren tonight, and the one thing, Shalgren got some experience in the NHL. He's 25, going on 26, I believe. So he got a taste of the NHL last year. He's played over in Europe a long time. He played in the American Hockey League last year and played fairly well. So they at least have somebody who is competent and capable as a third goaltender to fill in. Now, Russ, the thing I look at is, and Chris Johnston wrote about this today, in spite of this injury, the Leafs are going to need Murray. They're going to need him down the stretch. They're going to need him after he gets back. They're going to need him to play and play regularly. This is not a situation where one guy is going to be the number one and play 60 games. This was built as a tandem, and they need Murray to play. And last year in Ottawa, until he had 8 goals against Arizona, the last game before he was out for the year, he played well for about 6 weeks and then got hurt again.
Yeah, but there was also that time in Ottawa where they wanted to send him down. He didn't want to be sent down. There was a whole thing going on there too. Here's what I'm not gleeful that he is injured. I'm gleeful because I thought it was a bad investment by the Leafs. And I still think it's a bad investment by the Leafs. You hope that Murray can play 35 games now. You do. Because, again, there are some guys, and Kevin can attest to this, and Mike, I know you've seen it, where sometimes they just can't stay healthy. It just one injury starts another one, and sometimes it's one injury that occurs early in their career that has that happen. And that is my feeling with Murray. And my feeling is, and this is why I even said it on Sirius, I still think the Leafs will be looking for some sort of goaltender at the deadline. It doesn't mean it's for a number one, but I don't think you could ride with Eric Shalgren for 40 games this year. That's the problem. And if Murray puts them in that position because he's injured or oft injured, then they're going to have to do something else. And I still think there's a chance of that happening.
Yeah, and if he's out for if he gets hurt again and he's out for the year, then they have the LTIR money, they have some flexibility. But I should rephrase. Russ was gleeful that I, at this point, am wrong, but I believe in the end I'll be right. Where I am right, Kev, is the great goaltending of Jack Campbell, who gave up 4 goals in 9 minutes and got pulled against Calgary on Saturday. Thus, illustrating my point that, I think he's a competent average goaltender. I don't think he's a difference maker, but it is only 2 games. So, I know, like, I only saw the replays of and we welcome Joe Yurden to the show, and we'll get to you in a sec, Joe, but the Jack Campbell performance against Calgary on Saturday it wasn't the first game, but it was not an auspicious beginning to his 5-year contract with the Oilers.
Yeah, I actually saw the replays too, and I thought he did not look good in that. That said, I mean, he's not the first goalie ever to give up 4 goals in 9 minutes, and it's 2 games in, so let's not get too carried away about all that. But it'll be interesting to see. I like that move for Edmonton. I thought it was the best situation for them. They didn't have a lot of good options. I thought that was a good one for them, and we'll have to see kind of how it plays out. The one issue that that fits both Toronto and Edmonton, they're very similar type teams, and neither one of them is great or exceptional defensively, and that plays a role in their goaltending as well. So we'll have to see kind of what happens. Toronto may be better defensively.
I thought Mike would wait at least like 10 games, Kev, for a little body of work.
Yeah,
he's given a flaming hot take here.
I know what you're saying. Yep. I watched the replays too, and I thought, geez, man, come on, Jack.
But the thing is that what was illustrated also as I made it in my kooky predictions. I said Stuart Skinner could be the number 1 there by the end of the year, and he played fantastic. He made 31 saves. So, again, it's a small window, but
it is. I don't even like talking about it.
It's not even a window. It's like if you have a Landau roof, it's that little window in the Landau roof.
Yeah, I missed the beginning of the show, but I'm sure you were talking about Philadelphia. It's just like saying, the Flyers off to a great start. Are
they're going to win the division, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Now, Joe, I want to bring you on to talk about everything in the NHL, but start specifically with the Sabres, who are 1-1 right now. Mm-hmm. I know, talking to friends who are Sabre fans, they're enthused, they're encouraged, they're, they don't think that the team will make the playoffs, but they do think they'll play consequential games. They like the direction of the franchise. Let's just start overall with that. But then, if you want to talk about the Granato extension and the Mattias Samuelsson extension, which I like it because I think he's a good young defenseman. I was just taken aback by $4+ million in 7 years. What do you think?
Well, let's start with the Samuelsson thing, because I know that's a little bit more of a hot topic. It's something that I kind of addressed a little bit. That on the outside, I understand why it looks weird. People look at it and say, well, geez, this guy doesn't score points. Why is he getting this much money? What's going on? I don't understand. But from the inside, you look at it and you see how he's paired up with Dahlin, and how Dahlin is a vastly different player now with him. Now, that's partially because of Samuelsson. It's also due in part to Don Granato having a system, having a whole setup where it leans into what makes Dahlin a great player. He's a dynamite player. We've always known it. It's just, he got let off his leash completely under Housley. He got reined back in way too tight under Ralph Kruger. So now they've found the happy spot for him where he's cashing in, he's playing smart. Granato even said it today. He's doing things where he's not cheating the offense, where he's not trying to get in and sneak in and do things and cause problems on the backside. He knows he has Samuelsson defending him, and Samuelsson, just that alone is enough to make it worthwhile to make sure that Dahlin becomes one of those top 5 defensemen, puck moving, scoring defensemen in the league. Now I understand $4 million for 7 years is $4+ million for 7 years is a lot of money, but find me another player in the Sabres lineup in their whole system that plays the way Samuelsson does and can contribute the way he does defensively speaking. Now, you're not counting on him for offense, but he's not inept offensively either. Like, he can move the puck if he needs, so he makes a great first pass. But if you're leaning on him for your offense, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, I will tell you this. I have sources close to Mattias Samuelsson, and people could figure it out if they really want to, that told me even last year the difference with Dahlin, with Samuelsson, how they like each other. They trust each other. Even if for some reason as an outsider you think Samuelson's only worth 3.5, that extra money is allowable simply because of what Joe said. It allows Dahlin to be more offensive when he needs to, and the team not pay the price defensively.
Mhm.
That's a big deal. Plus, his physicality is really unmatched on their blue line anyhow.
Mhm.
And this is a physical league, and he has a reputation now, even as a young player, like, hey, he's going to drive you into the boards, and it's going to hurt. He's been doing that since the NTDP days. So
Mhm.
I was fine with the signing. I got it, but I also understood what Joe said. Like, if you're not watching him or watching the team, you do wonder. But again, he's a top pairing guy. So a top pairing defensive defenseman is worth that money.
Yeah.
Well, more importantly, like if you're paying attention to the league is all about comparables. And I wish I could remember and give him credit. Somebody on Twitter did comparables of all the shutdown defensemen in the league. And Samuelson's contract fits exactly in it. Like look at Ben Sherrod at $4.7 million, who's one of the best shutdown guys. And you're giving a younger player who's given up years to you. You're giving him that's in that range, and the range for shutdown guys is like 3.5 to 4.7 in that range. Like he fits exactly in the middle of it. Like it really isn't that controversial. That's what you pay those guys.
They bought 3 or 4 years of unrestricted free agency on the deal. I mean, the high end of the shutdown guys is a Jonas Brodin, who I think is over 6, but most of them are in that 4 to 5 range. So it's comparable. And if you're confident that he's going to be the partner for Dahlin for 5-6 years, then it's not a dumb signing, Joe. But where the league is going right now, look at all the 8-year contracts. They know the money is going up. We talked before about like the Nick Paul signing and all the Tampa signings. The Nick Paul one, he's making less than $4 million a year on an 8-year deal. They signed him to 8 years to spread the AAV out. I don't think that's what's going on here with Samuelson. I think he's getting what he's worth. But a Michael Bunting signing in Toronto, which may be happening in a couple weeks, they're talking about signing him to 8 years to spread the AAV out. That's where this league is going now.
Yeah, that's a tough spot. I mean, I understand why cap strap teams do it. I fully understand why. And the fact that the cap is going to go up over the next few years, and it's going to go up rather dramatically. I think that's assumed that's the case where you lock in guys like Samuelson, like Tage Thompson. That's another contract where people are just like, I don't know what they're doing here. But that cost,
it works there. If it's working there,
Right. But that cost, if you wait another year, say he puts up 40 this year, you're paying him $8-9 million a year on a long-term deal. So, it's something where they're saying that they believe in them. They're giving them those deals because they believe in them. They believe in the talent and how they play. And you're saving yourself money on the back end of things because, they could ask teams, players will ask for more money in the future. Like July 1st is a fascinating day, not because of free agency, because that's the first day they can extend Rasmus Dahlin. So, that's going to be very interesting to see how that works. I think I don't know if they can do that with power also, but
he burned the first year of VLC, so they could.
So I mean, it could be July 1st might be a very expensive day for Buffalo next year.
But you have to do that if you ever want to get anywhere in this league. Like I think we're looking at all these teams now, and like even the Flyers when they up Sanheim, they're talking about all the $5 million plus defensemen. At the end of the day, this is a defensive league, and teams are going to spend the most on that, and then a lot on the superstar offensive players and the top offensive players. That's where the money's going.
Well, it'll be an expensive day in Detroit too, because Seider will have, that'll be entering year 3 of his deal, July 1st. It'll be an expensive day in Toronto because that's when Austin Matthews can sign an extension. And Joe, I think they may get that done before. I mean, they can't legally sign it on July 1st until July 1st, but he's got a no move clause that kicks in on July 1st. So and I don't think the Leafs will trade him, but I'm saying they'll want to get that business done and over with before July 1st to avoid the shitstorm media wise if he doesn't do it. But in Buffalo, I think, you want to lock up those core pieces, those cornerstones, and Dahlin is one and Power will be the other.
Yeah, it's the way that they've refigured things now in Buffalo. I know when they hired Adams, they cleaned out the staff, they did all that stuff. It was very questionable. And I understand it. I totally get it. But the brain trust they have there now with Adams, with Jason Carmanos, with the stat folks, led by Sam Ventura, like these people are the ones that they're leaning on to really make the right moves with a lot of this stuff. And it seems right now, I mean, this could all change in a heartbeat. But right now, it seems like they're making all the right decisions as opposed to beforehand where it was, well, this is what we did. We have to do this. We have no choice.
I'll go so far as to say, Joe, that, the last two, Thompson and Samuelson, they're not just Granato guys. I think they would work anywhere. If you were saying, hey, they're only signing Granato guys, yeah, that might worry me for 3 years down the line, but I'm not worried about those.
Not that they're Granato guys, Russ, but I think, okay, Granato was the one that moved Thompson to center. And Thompson thrived because he was moved to center. So, I mean, it wasn't, Granato knows him back to the US NTTP days, but it's the fact that he recognized that he could play center, and they had a situation where Middlestat got hurt, I believe it was, and they moved him to the middle, and he had success. They recognized that Samuelson is that tough top four, good complement to Dahlin. I think the input of Granato, Joe, is extremely important to these guys. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's something that the players, Kevin Adams told us that the players wanted to know what Granato's status was when it came to signing these deals, because his contract was going to come up, I think it was next year, and they wanted to know, like, hey, is he staying? Like, what's the deal here? Because if he's staying, then I'm committed, I'm in. And sure enough, you get an extension done for him for 2 more years. Easy. That's an easy sell. That's an easy move, because if you're going to get those guys in under contracts, they don't look like bargains now, but they might be bargains in a couple of years. It's something that's just, it's so easy to get it done because he's done so well with the players. And, for the guys that have been around a while in Buffalo, and there's a few that have seen the different waves of how this has gone, especially Girgensons, but Girgensons, he's unflappable. Nothing phases him, but it's the level of respect that Granato gives all the players and how much he cares about them. I know that seems very schmaltzy and whatever, but it means something to these guys, and it says something about this new era of players where that means a lot to guys, because the hard ass coaches stuff is starting to go by the wayside. It's definitely going by the wayside, but if you got a guy that can care about you, that wants to make you better and find the best ways to help your game and make it work, boy, that's invaluable.
Now, go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to add one more thing to it too. We tend, when we talk about contracts, to talk about them in terms of the dollar value that we've sort of had in our heads for the last 6 or 7 years. But just before I left to go away for a couple of weeks, I had a conversation with a general manager who, brought up a really valid point, which is on a 23-person roster, it's now teams are averaging about 7 or 8 guys that they pay $1 million or less. So you really are looking at your salary cap. When we go up to 90 million, you're going to average about 6 million per guy for the guys that are the heart, not the $1 million or less players. But so there's going to be 15 of those earning about an average of 6 million. And, that's not that you start paying guys 7 or 8 million. It's really not that far out of the range, then it just means you're going to pay a couple of guys 3 million and 4 million. So, we tend to forget that, we're still thinking like 8 million, seems like, wow, like that's a big contract, but by that next rise, it really won't be that big of a contract.
But the 90 million will bring back the middle class, I think, but make it bounce back to the work.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think we're still going to end up having, you're still, this guy was insistent. He really felt that you're always going to have 8 guys making it that million or less, and you're going to pay those top guys more. He said, we're already starting to see that. We saw it with McKinnon, and we're going to see it with Matthews,
Well, the difference, and Kev, I'll illustrate this point. The difference between paying 8 guys, half of your cap, and paying 4 guys like a certain team north of the border does, and the lack of success that they've had because of that, and having to move players in and out and losing players in free agency. I just don't know if that's a winning formula. If it goes.
Are you talking about the Edmonton Eskimos? Who are you talking about?
There you go. They're not the Eskimos anymore, Russ.
Oh, they're not.
Go Elks.
What are they?
I don't even know.
They're the Edmonton Elks.
Oh,
Elks.
I'm sorry.
Elks?
The Elks.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me
Which is, you know what? In terms of the rebranding names, that one's not bad. The Washington Commanders, that blows. The Cleveland Guardians, that's terrible. The Edmonton Elks, they did it right.
Well, the thing that's mind-boggling about Washington is they had a great name. The Washington Football Club was outstanding.
That was a good name. Yeah,
it was outstanding. It was like Premier Soccer. The Washington Football Club is playing today. It was perfect.
Now, okay, granted, it's only for some teams have played 4 games, some teams have played 3 games. Obviously, teams want to get off to a good start. Some teams have not. Some teams have not by design. And I'll say the Arizona Coyotes or the San Jose Sharks, who are 0-4. That's by design. They're in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes.
I don't think Sharks are. I think they thought they were going to be improved this year. In fact, I know they do.
Okay.
They thought they were going to be better.
Well, they're not.
Yeah. No, they're not. No,
they got to be pretty mad then.
Yeah, but I mean, I believe that the Columbus Blue Jackets were improved, and it's not gotten off to a good start. Kev Laine has gotten hurt; he is out for 4 weeks, and I know Merzlikins was out for a game I think he was just ill. They had to play Tarasov in goal, but 0-3. That's not the start that the Blue Jackets wanted to get.
Well, and the Line A loss is a big one because
massive.
they're not very strong down the middle. So they would compensate a little bit because they had 2 big time wingers. I mean, it was kind of lost how many points Line A had in the second half of last season. He was over 40 in his last 30 some games. I forget exactly, but he had a strong second half, and they were excited about that. Him and Gaudreau, Johnny Hockey playing on the same line. It didn't really matter who the center was. They really felt strongly about that, and now he's out. Now you're looking at Gaudreau and you're thinking, who does he have to play with? So it's tough start for them, no doubt about it.
Now, Joe, the other team in that division, and when that poll came out, or when those odds came out before the season, and they had Sheldon Keefe as the number 1 guy, the best odds to get fired. Russ and I both looked at that list and said, Lindy Ruff at 9-1.
Yep.
That's where I'd bet.
We were buyers at Lindy.
Yeah, and after 2 games, they're chanting at the Rock. They're chanting, fire Lindy, fire Lindy. So I mean. Yeah, no. So, we both have experience with Lindy in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. He never struck me as somebody who was exactly great with young players. And this is a young team. I know they added Palat. I know they have Dougie Hamilton, but this is a young team. And I just didn't get bringing him back. So, I think this is a miss for Tom Fitzgerald. And I'm wondering how long it'll be before he makes the jump to Andrew Burnett or somebody else if they keep doing it.
It's fascinating because for my latest piece over at Bleach Report, I broke down the youngest rosters and who's a pretender, who's a contender. Right. And I get to the Devils, and my immediate snap reaction was like, nah, pretender. But then I started going through the young guys that they have and the guys that are coming. Luke Hughes is coming, and you go through this lineup and you're like, these guys should be really good and probably pretty soon. And they're not. I mean, I know goaltending was a big problem for him last year. It still might be this year. And Vanacek, we'll see what he does. But they have so many guys that have just kind of flown under the radar that are really good. And, you're talking about bringing in Hughes probably after Michigan is done this year and adding him to that blue line. And having him and Dougie Hamilton, oh boy, man. To have them go with Jack Hughes and it was, he's been banged up, but him, Sharon Govich, like these guys are really good. Dawson Mercer, these are very good players, and it's a great foundation for them to build on. The defense and the goaltending are the only things that might need help, but you bring in Hughes, that's going to solve that problem pretty quick.
Yeah, I spoke to an NHL insider recently, and their thought was on Lindy that, you know what? They've got some things that they're trying to work through as an organization, and they'll get around to Lindy, so it may not happen quickly. But you know what? If the fans start chanting it and they're not showing up to games, I could see that speeding things up.
Yeah, Elliot Friedman made the point, Kev, on his recent podcast that Brian Burke was not going to fire Ron Wilson until the crowds in Toronto over a decade ago started chanting "Fire Wilson," and then he basically had to because the masses were just against it. So, if this continues, then, Fitzgerald may not have a choice.
Yeah. The one thing I would add is this morning, Tom Laidlaw, I did a podcast with him, and he reported from a source that Lindy Ruff was told prior to the season that he had to have a good start or else, and that Andrew Brunette is the guy, which has kind of already been decided that if that's the case. Now, my only question for that is, he wasn't good enough for the Florida Panthers. They were successful and they didn't keep him. Is he the answer in New Jersey? Maybe he's learned from his issues in Florida, but his mandate was to improve the defense, and that didn't happen.
It's never a good sign when the head coach loses all of his assistants, and they fired Recchi, as somebody in the chat said. They fired Recchi and they fired Nazardine, and they brought in Brunette, and I don't know the other one that they brought in, but that's never a good sign. That means that the coach is on a short leash, and as you just said, Kevin, as I think everybody is looking at that situation, just says this is a team with a lot of talent, but I just don't know. Lindy never had the reputation of being a developmental coach. Jack Hughes backed him at the end of the year last year, and I get that he was loyal, and but I just don't know if he's the right guy for that team. And I
do want to add this, Mike. When Recchi was on his way out, he said Pavel Zacha is a good player. Pavel Zacha has 3 points in 2 games.
Yep.
That's not looking so good at the moment. It's early, but Pavel Zacha does have talent, and the fact that it never showed in New Jersey was kind of odd to me. And I don't expect him to be a star, but I did expect him to score more. That's something. And then again, Lindy Ruff, and again, the pronunciation has changed, so I apologize to Simon Nemec. It has changed to the point where I forget what it is. But Lindy sent him down, because it changed the other day, Kev. He mentioned it.
Yeah.
But I will say this. When Lindy sent him down and basically, was talking about working with him and how he's just, it's not there, it's not ready. Like that was same old Lindy. Like, you might as well have been talking about like a Russian defenseman in Buffalo. It was the same thing. So I just, these are little warning signs.
Yeah, for me, Lindy as a development coach, I just can't help but think of his last year in Buffalo and keeping Mikhail Grigorenko around after that, that abrupt training camp, the lockout shortened year, and keeping him and played him a ton of minutes those first 4 games, because I think the cutoff was 5 before they had to go back to junior. Yeah. And then the 5th game, he plays him 8 minutes. And then he played like 8 minutes a game for like the next week. And then they were stuck. Like you kept this guy on because you liked what you saw. And then you're like, well, turns out he's got to go through the rookies go through this stuff. And he didn't have patience for it because he knew the end was coming. And he tried to fight for your job. You're not going to put it on the shoulders of a kid.
Yeah, they burned the first year of his ELC, and then they sent him back to Quebec. I think it was Quebec.
Yeah, the Remparts. Yeah.
Remparts.
Yeah. Well, it beats what they did the following year when they tried to sneak him. They tried to sneak him on a rehab assignment to Rochester, and they're like, "No, he's not injured. You have to send him to Quebec."
The Ottawa Senators, a lot of hopes and dreams in Northern Ontario that they'll make a challenge for the playoffs, and I think they will based on the quality of their lineup. But I think there's going to be some growing pains there, Joe. They're 0-2 so far. I saw them on Saturday night. They didn't play a bad game. Anton Forsberg is not somebody I can depend on long term. They kept the game close until a goal late in the third period by Justin Hall. That being said, I think they'll get on the right path here. But DJ Smith was also on that list of potential fired coaches, and I heard that he's not in trouble right now. But if they get off to a bad start with all those additions, I don't know how long of a leash he gets.
Yeah, it's tough when the expectations change, because then you don't get a pass quite as easy if things don't go your way. The mood has changed in Ottawa. They do have the players that can make it work, and I like a lot of what they have there. And DJ Smith has provided opportunity for some guys that didn't really get it before. I think of Eric Brandstrom. I mean, that guy just kept getting buried. And I don't know if that's just a factor of he wasn't quite working out or he just never had.
I just don't think he ever had it, Joe. Honestly, that was always my opinion.
Russ has been consistent with that ever since his draft year.
Yeah, and that's fair. But I mean, you add in Jake Sanderson, like that's a huge addition for their blue line.
Yeah.
And, you figure out this lineup, Stützle's getting better. He's getting older and better. Like there's so many pieces there where you're like, okay, this team's going to take a big step here at some point. I didn't really buy into the hype for this year because I think this year that's an aggressive move. And they were aggressive in the offseason, but I think you're asking a lot of like Sanderson because you're talking about putting Sanderson in and playing him 20 minutes a game like immediately. You can't, I mean, very few guys have success like that. I know Thomas Chabot basically was thrown to the Wolves to play.
Yeah, he was thrown to the Wolves for sure.
And he's playing 27 minutes a night. Right. It's nuts.
So it's, I think they're a team that'll be better next year. But, I look at it, once Cam Talbot gets back, he's in a contract year. Yeah. That's a guy who played really well last year. And he got pretty screwed when they added Fleury.
Oh, yeah.
And listen, I think he's got a lot to prove. So once he gets back in there, I like Ottawa's chances a lot better, but pushing for the playoffs right now, especially with the way the division is, geez, man, you're asking a lot of these kids.
Now, Kev, there's a team that's 0-2 that I don't think are going to remain as a struggling team, and that's the Minnesota Wild, who have given up 14 goals in 2 games, a loss to the Rangers and a loss to the LA Kings. I somehow think they're going to turn it around because I think they're a much better team than that.
Oh, for sure. And, they booed Fleury, his home fans did after he gave up 3 or 4 balls. And he, to his credit, Fleury said after, I booed me too. I was terrible and I didn't play well and, we'll get it together. But, whenever you're an older player, as Fleury is, there's always the worry, well, is this, at some point the wheels fall off and you're not the same guy. And what if it's this year? Well, they don't have, great options now in net. So it's going to be interesting to see. I agree with you, though, Mike. They're too good. They've got too many quality players and, they should be fine. But they still, Fleury's a big part of this. Like they need somebody that can give them the lift in the playoffs, and he's that guy. But he's got to play better than he has thus far.
Yeah, and last year, I mean, Talbot had a pretty decent year until they made the Fleury trade, and they had Kaapo Kähkönen, who was not a bad number 2.
No.
This year, they've got Philip Gustafsson backing up Fleury. That's not exactly that's not a steady number 2.
But he knows Gustafsson from Pittsburgh, but yeah, it's not. I'm going to read you a quote, though, that happened at training camp. A website called bringmethenews.com has it, and apparently Guerin got videoed for one of those 4-part series by the team, and when training camp started, there was a question being asked, what is the season about? And Jared Spurgeon said hard work and having fun, and Bill Guerin said, "F that, it's about effing winning."
Okay.
That sounds like the Bill Guerin I've known for 20-some years. So
I'll say this about Fleury. I did, there's a goalie piece that I did recently, and looking at advanced stats for goalies can be a little weird, but Fleury was one of the worst when it came to goals saved above expected. He had horrendous numbers. Cam Talbot's numbers weren't great either, but they were vastly better than Fleury's. So some point, like those advanced numbers they give you, they're a warning sign. And I think stuff like that is a warning sign because it can catch up to you. And listen, I fully subscribe to the goaltending is voodoo thing because anything can change at a moment's notice and it can just work out. But I was very nervous about them just saying it's Fleury's our guy and we're going to go with him and basically go with him and not have anybody experienced enough to be able to back him up if something happens.
Now, one more of the winless teams, then we'll talk about one team that's undefeated before we end the show. The Vancouver Canucks are 0-2. They've given up 8 goals. JT Miller has been on the ice for all 8 of the goals.
Yeah, he made that very clear at the Flyers game, post game. I have that audio up on my SoundCloud page. It's just Russ Cohen _SoundCloud if you want to hear it. But he knew he was on the ice for all that, but they are a disaster in their own zone. They really are. And Boudreau is not happy about their special teams to start this season. So if they don't get good special teams and they're bad in their own zone, they're not making the playoffs. And Boudreau knows it. Like, he basically said that after the Flyers game. So that's where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, for them to make the playoffs, Joe, Thatcher Demko is going to have to be fantastic. But I think, you know, they're depending on the depth of their offense to sort of win games until their defense sort of gets aligned. I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence in their blue line. I don't think it's that good. And, you know, as we know, for teams like Edmonton and Toronto, you can't outscore your problems. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I'm a big Demko fan. I think he had a great year last year. I think he's one of the better guys in the league right now. He's a guy that's got to push for Vezina, if not this year, very soon. But I don't like Vancouver's depth in any way. I think they're severely lacking up front in scoring. I think they're very short on defense. You know, Quinn Hughes is a guy that needs kind of a defensive whisperer to help him out. I mean, great rookie season, but since then it's been a little, you know, the defensive shortcomings have kind of popped up. But
could the fact that they let Chris Tanev go, and Tanev was the perfect defensive
Oh yeah, no question.
Hughes.
Yeah.
Maybe Tyler Myers helps. He is coming back. I know that's an old subject too, but he's better than a lot of guys they have. Tucker Poolman got hurt. Who knows, you know, when he will be back, if ever, because he's had so many injuries.
mm-hmm.
That's what they have to hope for, or they've got to get their forwards to kick in with some better plays, because Demko really played well against Philly. He maybe misplayed one puck, and that turned out to be the game winner in a 3-2 game. But again, they had leads in the last 2 games too, and they blew both leads. And that's not on Demko. That's on the way they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the undefeated teams, you know, I don't think anybody expected, or nobody is surprised that Calgary got off to a good start.
No.
You know, Dallas, after the way they finished the year last year, they're 2-0. The Bruins are a little bit of a surprise. Detroit's a little big surprise, Kev. But the 3-0 Vegas Golden Knights, if you look at, you know, Logan Thompson with a .940 some odd save percentage, and Aiden Hill, I mean, if they, again, they're sort of lumped into Edmonton and Toronto. If they get quality goaltending, if they just get competent goaltending with that team, they're going to win a bunch of games.
Yeah, I mean, the key for them, though, is that, you know, they can't afford any injuries. Like, they really are not deep enough to sustain it if they don't, you know, they got to have all their top players playing, and they are. You know, it makes a big difference when you got everybody, you know, healthy. And Thompson has been good, and their goaltending has been sharp. And, you know, I think everybody knew what their potential is. And I think if they can have a healthy Jack Eichel, like, you know, in his first 5 years, he averaged 27 goals per season. Like, for a poor team, like, if playing with a good team, he should have a really remarkable season.
Yeah, I think he's a point a game guy. I just disagreed with Eck that he's a 100-point guy. I don't think he's that. And right now he's a point a game.
We know Eck with his hyperbole.
Yeah.
But Joe, the thing is, you know, they did play Seattle, they did play Chicago, so 2 of the 3 teams are sort of weak teams. But, you know, Eichel's a point per game right now. But the point is, if they get that kind of goaltending, even, you know, they're going to rack up points, and they're probably going to be in the top 3 in the Pacific. But Kev is right; they have to stay healthy. There's little or no depth there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw last year what happened when injuries popped up. I mean, it was a nightmare. I mean, they were digging guys out of Henderson, you know, all season long, and they're not ready for the show. And and the guys you're trying to replace, like, how do you replace Mark Stone? You can't. It's impossible. You know, Pietrangelo, like, how do you replace the guy like that? You can't. It just can't be done. In this case, for me, the health was the biggest issue with them, because you know, Stone with a back injury, who knows how that goes, because backs are just so finicky. But goaltending was the other one, and I'm not gonna pat myself on the back, but I was big on the Logan Thompson train, because I figured this guy needs a chance, and I liked the way he played last year. Granted, super small sample size, but he looked very good, very confident, and now he's getting that chance to run with it. Man, they might be regretting signing Leonard to that contract now, because that's a lot of money that goes against the cap that they. I mean, I don't know how you trade. It
seemed okay at the time, the signing. I didn't think it was terrible, but again, Robin Leonard is just, things sometimes just don't work out for him, and it's inexplicable.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, I mean, the guy plays hard. I mean, obviously, us media guys love him because he just speaks his mind. But I mean, he plays hard. He puts.
But he's a pretty good technical goalie too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's why some of the goals that he does give up, it's like, man, how does that happen? Like, you know what you did wrong, but yeah, I don't know, man. I had Vegas going back to the playoffs this year, and I know everybody in Buffalo was very eager to kick dirt on them after they missed the playoffs last year, but that's still a ton of talent on that team, and they can carry you far.
There is breaking news, Mike.
I was just gonna
go ahead.
Sonny Milano waivers always come out at 2:00. Sonny Milano, who had been signed to a 1-year deal by the Capitals, cleared waivers, so he's if they keep him up, he'll play. But on waivers today, Joe, Anders Bjork of the Sabres, a little surprising there.
A little bit, and here's where the interesting thing comes in for them. Are they going to be above the salary floor if he gets through, and if he goes to Rochester?
Oh, that's interesting.
Because he's $1.8 million against the cap, and that's going to put him really close to the bottom of the floor. Because I don't know how that's going to play out. Now, Bjork it was very frustrating watching him in camp because there just wasn't a lot of jump in his game. There was just a lot of like, what are you doing, man? Like, this is, it's a contract year for him. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to step up, you got to play. And I mean, Darlene gave it to him pretty bad one of the first few days in camp, popping up with cross checks, running his mouth at him, telling him, like, you better play. Like, if, shoving him, like, hey, what are you going to do about it? Like, come on, man, play the game. When you see something like that, one of the early days in training camp, it's like, oh boy, this doesn't look good for him. And that's, I'm not surprised. It's disappointing though, because his career's been so frustrating because, we saw him get benched a lot in Boston where it was, he couldn't work his way into the lineup. And you're like, man, this guy's pretty good. And he had a great start in Buffalo, but ever since then, it's just.
I've seen him excel in college and not excel in the NHL. I'd still give him a chance with the speed though. And I'm sure somebody will if they trade him or something. Mike, I was going to mention the NHL had put out the 3 stars, and Jake Ottinger was the third one, 2-0 with a .968 save percentage. And this show has loved Jake Ottinger. But again, Jake Ottinger pretty much can carry the Dallas Stars because they need great goaltending to really carry them a bit because they don't have the best defense. Defense is okay.
It's better than Vancouver.
It's better. Well, anything's better than Vancouver.
Yeah, I think their defense is fine. To be honest,
I think it's okay.
They got
Heiskin and Lindell and Suter, not bad.
Yeah, Ryan Suter still plays hard. There's still some guys there. And the one thing that's interesting about them, we've seen this phenomena before where your top players aren't producing, they're earning too much money, and that usually is a crushing blow for teams. But the guys underneath there, Hintz and Robertson, they've been phenomenal.
I always mention that Rupe Hintz starts every season hot as a pistol. He does.
Well, yeah, he does. But I mean, he's had a good year last year, and
he's a good player. Yeah. Yeah,
no, and they've been able to get away with that. The fact that Jamie Benn hasn't been the player that he was when that contract was started, and Sagan, while productive, still has not been the player that he was.
No.
But somehow because Robertson and Hintz have been so good, they get away with it.
But Sagan has 3 points in 2 games. Like, I do feel he's going to do better than last year.
Well, he was okay last year production.
Right. And I think I think he had like 50-something points. I think he could get to 70 points again. I think when you have that double hip surgery, I do think there's a big long period to get back to yourself.
It's like the ACL injury.
Yeah.
You can come back after a year, but it really takes you 2 years to get back to the player that you were. So
yeah.
All right, guys, excellent show. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast for our guests Joe Yerdon, Kevin Allen, Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.